Welcome into this episode of the How to Ride a Roller Coaster Show. Today, my guest is Mr. Trevor Houston. He's the executive producer and host of the Who You Know Show. What's going on?
What's good, man? How are you doing?
Man, not too bad. How's your week so far?
It's going. It's going good. We're like mid-June right now, and it just feels like time is just going so fast. I can't believe we're already halfway through the year, but things are great.
Nice, man. Yeah, it does feel like it's moving fast because we actually had a spring this year. It wasn't an oven back in like April and May like it was last year, so we're definitely at that time now. But before we kind of dive into where everything is now, tell everybody a little bit more about your background and we'll take it from there.
Yeah, so, I got started doing the Who You Know show about so it's been 6 years now. We've been doing that podcast.
Nice.
Started doing that as a way to add value to the community. We got introduced to this job seeker community out here in Dallas, and at the time there wasn't a whole lot of resources elsewhere in the United States, but Dallas had a lot of it, had a lot of resources for career changers.
Yeah.
And so I got plugged in with that group pretty early on, started volunteering and giving back, and decided to do a podcast to really highlight the different resources that were here to make them available all across the country and give people more exposure to some of the things that were out there.
Nice.
And so that's kind of where the Who You Know show started about 6 years ago.
Nice. So because you went to some of those meetings, it just kind of grew into that. You had just more of, surrounding yourself with people that were also doing the same thing and said, hey, man, this is an opportunity to really start to get that word out there.
Yeah, I noticed that there were all of these groups, but they were all kind of siloed off in different areas, and it was like people didn't really know where all the stuff was, know. And so I was like, you know what, let's put a flashlight on this, you know what I mean? Let's spotlight it and let people know about the different resources, because there's all kinds of cool stuff out there for free to help these people that were in and out of jobs. And the reason I got started, helping career changers was actually I was networking. I had a guy that I was sitting down over coffee, and I was telling him what I do. So for a living, separately and independently from the Who You Know show, I'm also a licensed financial professional, and so I help people, with 401k rollovers, investments, insurance, things like that, retirement planning. And I was sitting down with this guy over coffee, and we're just chatting like this, and he's asking me what I do, and he's telling me what he does. And when I said 401k rollovers, he said, oh, you need to go check out this group, okay? It's got a bunch of job seekers. And I said, well, yeah, that totally makes sense, They leave their job, they've got an old 401k, stuff like that. So it totally made sense. He goes, you need to go see this group. And so I did. But when I walked in there, I'm telling you right now, David, I felt like my heart sank, because I walked in there and I saw this group of people who were really struggling.
Yeah.
They were going through a hard time, man, and they were really dealing with, anxiety and fear and stress. And, a lot of them were seasoned professionals, executive level people that have climbed up that ladder, got to the top, and then corporate America gave them the axe, okay? And now they're in this position where they're dealing with ageism. And these folks are having a really hard time getting back to work, and it's taking them an extended period. Some of them are 6 to I had a guy that was 28 months out of work. Wow. And so what that does to your mental, it's an attack on your mental health, right? You just feel like you're worthless, hopeless, And anyways, so my heart felt for this group. And I identified that day one when I walked in there. I couldn't just go in there and be like, hey, you want to talk about your 401k? You know what I mean?
Right. Read the room. Yeah.
Yeah. You got to be aware, right?
Yeah.
Which is funny, because I've heard they've kicked people out for that kind of stuff, right? Man. And I immediately identified that. Like, you couldn't do that. Are you crazy? So, anyways, just started volunteering, giving back, serving that group, figuring out what the problem was that they were dealing with. And I found out that the anxiety and the stress was from the financial, okay?
Yeah.
Because they have a financial runway. They got to get back to work, and every month they're out of work is doing
Shrinking and
this.
shrinking. Yep.
Yeah, right. So that's their financial runway. So that's what's causing the stress and anxiety, right? But most people don't want to admit that. So what do? They put their head in the sand. They try to like pretend it's not happening, which is actually making it worse.
Yeah.
Okay. It's kind of like if like you've got a crack in the foundation of your house, you know it's there,
It's still
right?
there.
It's still there,
It's
and
still
you're like,
there.
I don't want to do anything about. Well, it's just getting worse, man. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? It's like ignoring the dentist. The longer you wait, the
Ugh.
worse it gets, man. The
Yeah.
worse it gets. So anyway, so they had this going on, but then there were other issues they were dealing with. They were dealing with, hey, I'm getting ghosted by employers. I'm not being seen. I'm applying online. My resume is going nowhere. All these different things, LinkedIn, resume, da 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 da, all these different things. And so I'm like, all right, let's figure out a way to solve these problems holistically. How can I help them tackle all these things at the same time?
Yeah.
And that's what we did. That's what we designed the Who You Know show, and I've developed a lot of career resources. I've got a lot of financial resources. We got a lot of different things to help make that transition smoother and make it less painful.
Have you noticed there being one or two main culprits of that? I mean, like you mentioned, the mindset, especially when you start to think about that runway starting to get a little bit smaller and you start to kind of put yourself out there for positions that sound great, you know you'd be a fit for, would knock it out of the park, and you don't get anything. Nobody's even giving you a chance. So you start to kind of get that negative psyche. But I mean, did you see any other things that were just like the right off the top where you're like, man, we can really help here?
Yeah, definitely. What you said right about mindset. Mindset is what I think is probably one of the number one things, because I can teach you a whole bunch of strategy, but if you don't have the right mindset, it's a waste of time. Okay, so if your mindset's all jacked up and you're feeling like all depressed and like the world is coming to an end, like whether you think you can or think you can't, either way you're right. I'm sure you've heard that.
Oh, yeah.
So that's number one, okay? And yes, I've got strategies and I've got all kinds of things that help them to get noticed, because if you are applying online, you're getting ghosted and no one's talking to you. Okay. So how do we solve that problem? What do we need to do? Well, we need to become more visible. And so how do we do that? Well, we need marketing. Everybody talks about the job search is like sales. Okay? Well, it is. You got to sell yourself, but it's also marketing,
Yeah.
right? Before a sale happens, right, you got to have marketing. If
Yep.
no one knows you, then no one flows you. Okay, that's Grant Cardone. He says, if no one knows you, then no one flows you, right? So we've got to get seen and we've got to market. So what I help these job seekers do is we put together a video resume, okay, and I teach them content creation, okay, and we start to post content, on all the social platforms, not just LinkedIn, to help bring awareness to their situation. See, their problem is they're in a black hole somewhere. They applied online and they're just like not being seen.
Yeah.
Right? Well, let's let the world know what they're looking for. And so that's one of the things that we do. There's a lot more to it, but that's probably the number one thing that we try to tackle is getting them seen by decision makers. Because the bottom line is, if you were having frequent conversations with decision makers at the companies that you want to work for, it's not a problem.
Yeah.
Right? But they're not getting enough at-bats, right? They're not getting enough swings. They're not getting enough interviews. The average interview is one per month. That's the average, one per month, one shot, one swing per month.
Wow.
And so, like, my job is to get them more swings. I got to get you more at-bats so that you can go up there and crush it, knock one out of the park.
And do you have a lot of that marketing background yourself that you kind of bring to them? Like, where does that come from?
Oh, great question. Love that. Okay, so No. No. Um, my background was always sales,
Okay.
right? My background was sales until I got into financial services. And all of a sudden now I'm in an outside sales role because before I was always in an inside sales role. My background was like the auto industry and all of that. And so, in the auto industry, they bring clients to you.
Yeah.
Right, like the dealership will advertise and market, and they have commercials and
Right.
all this kind of stuff, and they bring people in, and your job is to be a really good salesperson and
For sure.
build the know, like, and trust, and all that good stuff. Well, then I got into financial services, and there's no commercials. It's on me. It's all on me. I got to go out there, and I've got to bring people, to the table and have conversations and have
Yeah.
tough conversations, by the way.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'll tell you, when you start saying things like life insurance, people want to run away from you.
Yeah.
Or you start talking about retirement or investments or whatever, people like don't want to talk about it, again. So, money is actually a very sensitive topic. You've got religion, politics, and money,
Yeah.
right?
And it's like one of those cracks in the foundation. It's like, look, I know I'm behind, but I don't want to talk about it. Let's just
That's
what
it.
am.
That's it. And so, like, all right, how do I solve that problem? Okay.
Yeah.
And by the way, I don't want to knock on doors. I don't want to pop, 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 pop. I don't want to do that. Okay. And I don't want to cold call. Okay.
Yeah.
I did that too. Don't want to do that. So how do I solve that problem? Well, I solve that problem by marketing. Okay. Marketing is how we bring people to me, right? If they're seeing me consistently, whenever they have a need, right?
Yep.
I'm top of mind, and they think of me, and it brings people to my front door. Like, instead of me going to their front door, they're coming to my front door.
Right.
And that's a completely different conversation.
And
When
then
they're
you get to focus on what your specialty is, which is the sales part. They're there.
correct.
Nice. Nice.
Bingo.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, and so it took me a while to figure that one out. When I first got into financial services, man, my first year and a half was rough because
Yeah.
I was at the top of my game at the car dealership I was at, and then I came here and I sucked. And I'm like,
What is
dude,
happening?
what's going on? I know I'm good. Like, I have all these trophies and stuff. Like, I was a top producer. I'm like, what? Like,
Yeah.
what's going on? And the difference was I was just selling so hard, and I was just, it just came off like,
Yeah.
I don't know, came off
Yeah.
like commission breath, man. It was bad.
Man, and it's that give and take, It's like the Seth Godin marketing thing. It takes 7 times of somebody seeing your message before they take an action. And we
Yeah.
just live in such this different world now where it's not like it was 20 years ago, prior to the internet and Facebook ads and Google ads and all that kind of stuff, where you're not trying to interrupt somebody's day. You're trying to make them a part of the conversation. And that's sounds easier, but I mean, it's so difficult to do in practice. Like you said, you have to put yourself out there. People may scroll past you the first time, hear it the second time, watch something you did, or download a piece of content the third time, and then whenever it's something that clicks, you're the first one that they think of.
Absolutely. And that's why this whole podcasting thing like you're doing right now, I mean, it's a game changer for anybody that's looking to market anything. Okay. And I tell the job seekers too, I'm like, you need a podcast.
Yeah.
Like, a podcast is a content machine.
Yeah.
You can take this episode we're recording right now, and I know you're going to chop it up in a million different slices. Okay.
Yeah.
And it's the easy button because you're just having a conversation.
Yeah.
Right?
That's
and
it.
that's it. It's just a conversation that you chop up a million different ways. And so for the job seekers, I've literally told them, like, hey, you need the Job Seeker podcast. Okay. And I even gave them a tagline to come in, and it's something like, welcome to the Job Seeker podcast. My name is Trevor Houston, and on this show, you got to tell me why before I apply.
Nice.
You
Nice.
got to tell me why before I apply. And so what I'm doing is I'm going to have informational interviews, right, with people at the company that I want to work for. Right? So if I wanted to go work at Coca-Cola, and let's say I want an HR job, I'm going to go interview people at Coca-Cola that are doing HR, and they're going to come on my podcast, and I'm going to ask them about Coca-Cola. Hey, what's the company like? What are the things you like about it, hate about it? What would you change? What's the culture? What's the fit? All that kind of stuff. It's an informational interview, but you do it in a podcast, you record it, and then you chop it up in a million pieces, and you have marketing.
That's it. That's
it. It's simple, but
So you started that, like you went to all the networking events, found the like-minded people, saw that there was an issue, saw how you could bring some solutions to those issues. Mm-hmm. Where did you start then? How did we get from there? Like you said, hey, I'm going to do this, but so that I can help all these people because I feel for them and I want to make a difference. How did you go from there to where we are now, where you interview big name people like Grant Cardone and all of that kind of stuff?
Yeah. So when we started the show, it was radio. Okay. I've made, let me put it to you this way. When it comes to podcasting, I've made every mistake in the book. But I've also gotten pretty good at it because I've made every mistake in the book. I started off, and it wasn't all, Grant Cardone and all these big names. Okay. We were bringing just people. I was bringing recruiters and hiring managers, career coaches, anybody that could support that network I was bringing in.
Nice.
And we did these interviews at KVGI Radio here in Frisco for a couple of years, and probably did around 200 episodes. And the first episode sucked really bad. It was awful. It's actually my favorite episode because it's so bad.
So bad.
And
that's always the best thing. It's like go back and look at the first 2 or 3 times you did something, and you're like, yeah, it's
a time capsule too. I love it.
For sure.
Podcasting is such a cool thing because it's a time capsule, right? And but we did like 200 episodes with them, and then the pandemic happened, and it shut them out of business. The KVGI went out of business, and one of the biggest mistakes that I made as a podcaster was I did not have control of the content. I was just going, moving, and we were doing live streams. We weren't really doing anything with the podcast. We were just doing live streams, and anyways, long story short, I lost all that content.
Wow.
I guess technically I could go into like Facebook as the memory comes up, and I could download it out of Facebook. It would take forever and a million years to do this, but technically it's still out there. But it would take a lot of work to get it.
Sure.
And anyways, so I lost all that content, and we moved to KVGI. We moved to Real News PR here in Dallas. And I don't know if you've been over to their studios or not.
I've toured it once. It's beautiful.
Oh, you toured
Great
it?
location.
Okay.
Yeah, I love it.
Phenomenal.
Yeah.
These guys are the real deal. And so we started over there after the pandemic. And that's really what I'll tell you. Things took off. It was a next level production.
Yeah.
They've got multiple cameras and lighting, and they have producers, and it's really the real deal. So that's where it started to take off. And also at that same time, Clubhouse took off.
Oh, yeah.
And I was super early in Clubhouse, and I was in rooms with big names like Grant Cardone and a lot of these big people. And so next thing you know, I'm getting all these big names on the show, and it's really taken off since then. And the studio, I will say this, the studio gave some credibility to us.
Yeah.
All right. Remember, we had done the show for a couple years, but didn't really have anything to show for it. My content was kind of like lost. And so how am I going to get a big name like a Grant Cardone on my show? You know what I mean?
Right.
Anyway, so the studio we were in, which this is a tip for somebody, is high quality studio, which says something. It makes you stand out from all the other podcasts that are out there, right? There's so many podcasts out there now. If you have a Zoom account, you got a podcast.
For sure.
Right? Right?
That's
so
it.
How do we stand out? How do we make ourselves look, more professional? And so, well, hell, if they're in this multi-camera fancy studio with a live studio audience, they must be somebody. Like, we have a live studio audience.
Wow.
right? Which it's all smoke and mirrors,
But
but
it's still there.
but it made it look right.
Yeah.
Perception is reality,
Right.
and so that's how in the very beginning when we started at KVGI or at Real News PR, we were able to get some of these higher, bigger names just because when they look online, they're like, oh wow, this must be something. Let's go check it out. And then once you start getting those big names, now it's even easier to get other big names because it's like a resume. It's
Yeah.
like, hey, yeah, I've had Grant Cardone, I've had Dave Meltzer, I've had Sharon Lechter, I've
Wow.
had Tim Story, I've had a bunch of big names. And so after you start having those, when you go after someone else who's also a big name, you can use that. It's kind of like name dropping. You
For
can kind
sure.
of use that resume. It's like, hey, we've had these people on, and we just had Ken Coleman on. Anyway, we've had some pretty good shows.
Wow.
So that's
And
how that
so
kind of all came about.
and so being that that's local is like if there's somebody that's not local to like the DFW area, is it just video on their side, but everything on your side is all studio lit, or do you make everybody come in studio?
Great question. So during the pandemic, obviously everything was
Yeah.
remote. And
Sure.
so they would be like on the TV screen, and you know,
Nice.
They do really good remote interviews because their background is news,
Yeah.
right?
They have all the
Jeff
setup.
Crilly,
Yeah.
yeah, Jeff Crilly is the owner, and he retired, from the news. He was a news broadcaster and all that. So that's their background. They're really good at the production they do, and so yeah, we did a lot of remote interviews. And now my focus is really shifting to in-person interviews because it definitely brings a whole different
Different dynamic.
dynamic.
Yeah.
Like we just had Ken Coleman and he was live, and
Wow.
we did it in front of a live studio audience, and talk about like that was a freaking cool episode.
Yeah.
It just was. It was a really cool episode, and so I'm really focused on that. And what I'm gonna do is our remote. I'm not going to use the studio and pay studio time,
Yeah.
for remote. I'll do it like this at my office. I've actually built my own studio here.
Yeah. It looks great. Yeah.
Thank you. And so this is where I'll do my remote interviews, and then my live in person will be at that
At the
studio.
studio.
Yeah.
So let's go back a little bit. So whenever you first started that networking group, where did the entrepreneurial part of you kind of come from? Because a lot of people would have walked into that networking group, thought of the reason that you're there, which financial, insurance, whatever the case may be. They wouldn't have gone the other way and said, well, this is something that I can build with multiple layers to impact multiple people and build something bigger. Where did that piece kind of come from for you?
I've always kind of had a little bit of an entrepreneurial spirit, even from like back as a kid. I didn't grow up with money or anything like that. Like I grew up very, very, very poor,
Yeah.
and like super poor, like to a point where we didn't have electricity and water, and it was pretty rough. And anyways, I remember like getting a little bit of money and going to like Sam's and buying like in bulk or like a big old box of like Rice Krispie treats or something like that, and going to school and like slanging Rice Krispie treats, you know.
Right.
But they say don't get high on your own supply, so I was also eating them. You know what I mean?
Two for
I
a
was
dollar,
also
more for me.
Yeah, and I also, I mean, so I always had like an entrepreneurial kind of like spirit, even from a kid, just from my background of like figuring out a way, you know,
Yeah,
if you want something, there's a way to get it. You know what I mean?
for sure.
Uh, and I think for this group, again, I saw myself in them because remember I told you my first year and a half in financial services was really, really rough.
Yeah.
I remember feeling like a failure, feeling hopeless, worthless. I remember watching my bank account do this, okay, going
Yeah.
backwards in my runway, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, am I gonna have to sell my house? And am I gonna do? Oh my gosh, what mistake did I make? I made this transition into a different industry. What did I do? I was the top, and now I'm the bottom, and like self doubt, all of
Yeah.
that stuff, right?
Yep.
I remember those feelings, and I saw myself in them. I walked in there and I was just like, man, I can help these people, right? I really can. And I'm like, so I put my own interest aside, okay? And yeah, is that still part of it? Sure, it's still part of it, but it's like almost secondary. I want to help them genuinely. It's a holistic approach to cash flow because I got to help somebody recover their cash flow,
Yeah.
transform their life, get whole, and also then we help them with the financial impact all at the same time. And so it's pretty good. Some people, most people really, really appreciate it. Every once in a while you get somebody who's like, you can't please everybody, right?
For sure. And
But
it's like you mentioned earlier, they have to have their mindset in the right place. They have to want to change whatever situation or learn how to think differently and not be their worst enemy, not let that negative on their shoulder be the one that they're listening to all day. Because if you dwell on that, if you just stew in it, it just makes it worse. And even if somebody like yourself does come along and you're like, look, we can change this, we can do all these things, the first part I would assume is just getting that piece off of them so they're not carrying that with them as they're doing business with you.
100%. It's the mindset of someone who's in career transition is really, really, it's different. Okay. They have a mindset shift. They go from like an abundance mindset to a scarcity mindset. And it's like, I got to get a job, got to get a job, got to get a job. That's all I can think. Oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. Like they're in quicksand.
Yeah.
Okay. And they're struggling. And the harder they struggle, the quicker they sink. Okay. And so I've got to come along. I've got to motivate them. I got to encourage them. I got to inspire them. I got to speak life into them. Okay. And I got to get their mindset shifted before we can really even start having some of those other conversations because they're not going to hear it.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how I could tell them whatever. It doesn't matter. Right?
Yeah.
Again, it's like they just want to ignore the dentist. They don't want to go to the dentist. I got other things I'm worried about. I don't want to go to the dentist. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah. Man.
So it's hard. It's not easy. It's
No,
not
for
easy
sure.
what I do, but it's definitely rewarding. When I get messages from people, like the most rewarding part for me is when I get messages from people of how I've saved their lives. Literally because they were on the edge of suicide and things like that.
Wow.
Those are the types of messages that, I'm like, okay, I'm doing the right thing. I'm doing the right thing, and keeps me going and really fills my cup.
For sure.
You know.
I was going to say, it feels like, anytime that you're in doubt or wondering yourself, when you get something like that, that's all the affirmation you need right there. It's like, look, things are going in the right direction as long as I keep having them focused on them first and doing what I need to be doing.
Yeah, serve first, and the rest will fall into place. I think it was Zig Ziglar said it, something like, you want to make $1 million, help 1 million people.
Yeah.
You want to make $1 billion, help 1 billion people. Something like that. I could be totally messing that up. But
That sounds
it's
right,
really
though.
about
Yeah.
it's really about you get paid. The value that you get paid is in what you get paid is in the value that you produce, right, for people, and how much you help, or how much are you helping people. Like if you think about Apple, right, and the iPhone, right, they put a phone in the hands of just about every human being, right. They helped a lot of people. They solved a huge problem, changed the world.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and it doesn't even have to be something as big as that. Like think about the little piece of plastic that goes around the edge of your shoelace,
Right.
or a paper clip,
Yep.
right? Paper clip. It's a little problem, but man, every office, everywhere, the Post-it note, right? It's a
Yep.
piece of paper with some glue on the back of it.
Man. I think about that kind of stuff all the time. Just, for me, it's how do I kind of get rid of some of the screen time? You know, like if you're waiting on your table at a restaurant, most people, when they say, oh, you have 10 minutes or so, your table will be ready, most everybody just picks up their phone and scrolls through. You know, but I've been trying to kind of make more of that conscious effort to put it down and just be in the moment, look around. And you start to notice things, especially in places like the grocery store. When you walk through the produce section and every so often that little mister will come on and it'll spray the radishes and the lettuce. And I'm like, somebody made that. You know, it's just all these little things that, like you said, it doesn't have to be the level of Apple, but if you just start to look around, there's opportunity everywhere.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. A lot of times those solving little problems or modifying something. Uh, so Chris Gronkowski, I don't know if you know who he is.
The name sounds familiar, but I don't think I do.
So you may know Rob Gronkowski.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Yeah, Rob Gronkowski won all the Super Bowls with Tom Brady and all that, right?
Yeah.
Chris Gronkowski is his brother, who was also an NFL player. He played for, the Cowboys and the Broncos and Indianapolis Colts. And anyway, he played on a few NFL teams. And he came up with a product called Ice Shaker, which is those shaker bottles when you're working out, right?
Yeah. Have the little metal spigot on the inside just to kind of help shake the stuff up. Yeah.
Yep. He created a product, and he went on Shark Tank with it. And it's actually, like Yeti is a steel cup.
Yeah.
We created a Yeti steel shaker, and then there's an agitator in the lid that screws out. And so he essentially just made a better shaker bottle because all the other shaker bottles were plastic and they would sweat, they would sweat and they would get warm. Your shake would get warm. And so anyway, he took all the best things of these shaker bottles and he just made a better shaker bottle. And he got a deal from Ice Shaker or got a deal from Shark Tank from all the sharks. They all bought into it and exploded his business. And now it's kind of crazy. He put check this out. He put a Bluetooth speaker at the bottom that screws out.
Why not?
Why not?
Why not?
It's the coolest freaking bottle. Okay? And he what's really cool about what he did is he made it to where it's super easy to customize them. So he got all these different colors and all this stuff, but you can put your logo on it and they engrave them. Like he's got one of those things just
3D printer or not 3D, but yeah, engraving.
Yeah, and
Nice.
so he made it on a large scale, customizable for each person that walks in the door. You want to put your logo on it, you put your logo on it, like super easy. So not only is it the coolest bottle in the world, but it's personalized to you.
Yeah.
Right? So I don't know. He just made a better. I think I've heard him say a better mousetrap. Right? They
Right.
talk about that on Shark Tank. A better mousetrap. So maybe it's about doing something like that.
Yeah. Just keeping your eyes open, just looking around in your environment. It's just kind of picking our heads up a little bit and being there. Because I think stuff's in front of us all the time. It's just, do we choose to do something with it, like you did when you walked in the door that day, or do you not? And so you talked about a little bit, kind of one of the downs on this entrepreneur roller coaster. So you were radio show, COVID happened, so you didn't have access to the content. What were one of your highs, like say with your radio show now, that you were like, okay, we're back, we got some wind behind us, we're moving up?
Yeah. So when we started getting some of those big episodes, those big guests, right, the Grant Cardones and stuff like that, that was really cool. Started picking up some steam, and then I almost made the same mistake twice, though. Okay. So I almost made the same mistake twice. At Real News PR, they also take control of the content. Okay. And I understand why these studios do it this way. Okay.
Sure.
Because if they have a whole bunch of different shows, like let's say you had 50 shows that you're producing, well, and their job is not to just produce it, but to like distribute it. So they create one podcast channel that they're distributing all of those shows from.
Yeah.
So that's why they control it. It just makes their job easier.
Sure.
So I didn't have like my own channel. It was coming from their channel. Anyways, so I almost made the mistake twice, and I had uh, a guy reach out to me in a DM on LinkedIn, and he was like, "Hey, uh, I edited one of your episodes. I want you to listen to the difference."
Wow.
And I was like, "Okay." It's a different approach. Like he went ahead and did the work ahead of time,
That's nice.
right? Yep.
Yep. Smart.
Very smart, right? Most people would send a DM first and then try to. No, he did the work first and said, "Hey, I want you to listen to the difference." I said,
That's awesome.
"Okay," because he did it. I'm like, I can't say
The
no.
work's done. I'll do it. Yeah.
I'm
Heck
gonna
yeah.
listen. So I listened to it and I'm like, "Oh, dang, that's a huge difference, right?" And so again, we were always live stream. We do a lot of live streams, and so what they were doing is they were just slapping that live stream audio up on the podcast, and that's never going to perform well. You got to edit it up, and you've got to,
Yep.
you got to do what's necessary in the podcast world. Which I was naive, and I had my, I guess I just wasn't aware of what all the podcast world was about, and so
Right.
he enlightened me, and we started. I was like, man, okay, crap. Well, I like had to go back and edit like 200 episodes from Real News PR, and I took control. I did. I learned from that lesson. Now, and like, they're not doing the distribution side of things. I'm doing the distribution side of things. I've taken control because I don't ever want to lose it again. I don't
Yeah.
want to go through that headache twice. But yeah, we had to go back in time and edit like 200 episodes. We're still working
Jeez.
on it. It is like a beast.
It is.
It's a beast, man.
That's a lot of minutes and a lot of hours.
Dude, it's so much work, but we're
Yeah.
seeing, you're right, the growth, which is super cool, and we're re-releasing those episodes. So like, you
Nice.
know, anyway, it's a lot of work, but what that has done is now I really know the podcast space because I got my hands dirty. It forced me to get my hands in it.
Yep.
Okay. Like we were paying people. Like I thought, we were paying people as being done right, whatever. No.
Yep.
Like
Yep.
I'm like, oh my gosh. So I had to get my hands dirty and I had to I learned how to edit, learn how to do the timestamps and the show notes and the
Yep.
thumbnails and
The
all the little
bumpers
details.
and everything. Yep.
Yeah, all the little details, right?
Nice.
So, but it's cool. But now I have a new skill.
That's
Okay.
it.
Right? I don't look at it like, dang, that sucks. I look at it like, no, I have a skill that I'm now starting to teach other people, and that skill's very valuable, actually. So,
Yep.
it's pretty cool.
Man, that's awesome. So, as we're wrapping up, tell people how they can follow you, how they can keep up with you. Floor is yours as long as you need it.
Yeah, absolutely. So for the podcast, you can come connect with me, whoyouknow.show, whoyouknow.show. And if you want to connect with any of the financial work that we do, you can visit clearpathwealthstrategies.com. That's clearpathwealthstrategies.com. And then for me, just connect with me on LinkedIn. That's my one of my bigger platforms that I really am very consistent on. And you'll actually, if you want to send me a DM, you can get a conversation with me there. So
Fantastic. And I'll make sure that all of that's listed in the notes to make it super easy to find you. But I appreciate your time. It's been a pleasure.
absolutely. I appreciate you.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to like the video and comment. I love to interact. And as always, be sure to subscribe to the channel.